right, so I was watching this interview, Zach.
Okay.
I guess we got to say each other's names, right?
I've got Michael,
And it was of Tom Holland. Do you know who Tom Holland is?
Yeah, Spider-Man.
Yeah, Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Good. I'm proud of
you. For whatever reason, he's made it like I see interviews and stuff with him, so I don't know. Yeah.
And he's come out saying that I don't know that it's so much that he doesn't like American food.
Oh.
But that he doesn't think any food is actually American food.
Well, let's go to the let's run with the examples.
So I was going to ask you, what would you name as American food? I have a list from ChatGPT of things that are reasonably considered American food. And let's see, how many of these you can get. There's a lot of them on here, actually.
I'm going to talk out loud. So obviously, if you say pizza, people are going to say Italian. I don't know if like a New York style pizza slice counts or not, because it's like it is. I mean, Italian Americans, I feel like, are a big part of America.
Right.
Same thing. You're gonna think if you go like super origin of like hamburgers and hot dogs, you're probably like that's Martin Luther and these crazy Germans. But it's like that's like an American 4th of July thing.
So in the video, someone says hamburgers. He's like, that's from Germany.
Yeah. And
so, but the truth is, like, the name is from there, and it's actually we split it at ham and burger, right?
Okay, yeah.
And so then we have like chicken burgers or turkey burgers.
Yeah.
But it's actually Hamburg is
from
the
like
name of the town, and then that they add to it. But what happened were people came over to America and they made beef patties similar to what they did in Hamburg, but they didn't prepare them like we do here.
Okay. Yeah.
So the hamburger, like those immigrants said, oh, we're going to make this sandwich, and it's kind of like what we grew up back then, but it's new. But it's so that is counted as an American food.
Because I feel like that should be on the list.
Yeah.
Obviously.
As well as hot dogs.
Okay, because hot dogs, it's different from bratwurst. I mean, it's like it seems like it's bad enough for
Derived from German sausages, but Americanized and mass-marketed like that they don't have other places. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure twice as bad for you, too.
America
for the win.
Yeah.
American food, so... you think French fry, obviously, it's like French is in the name.
Right.
I just feel like that is American, even though I'm sure it's not American. It just seems like a common with every meal.
The word French has to do with how that's cut. Has nothing to do with the country France. Okay. But from what I'm told, they originated in Belgium.
Okay.
So.
Yeah. Other things that I would think of I don't know the origins of like pulled pork or something like that.
Barbecue. Is barbecue American style, like Texas, Carolina, Kansas City, unique regional variations evolved in the U.S. So barbecue is definitely, not that no one ever smoked meat over a fire before, but how we do it is unique to us.
Man, all right. I'm starting to slow down a little bit.
There's 4 other main things on here.
I'm trying to think what's like classic American meal.
There's a piece of chicken they used to throw away.
Chicken livers?
No. That now become a huge deal.
Oh, chicken feet?
No.
Oh man.
Chicken wings, buffalo wings.
Chicken wings. Okay.
So buffalo wings are very American. Fried chicken.
Okay, I can see that.
Meatloaf.
Meatloaf. I hate meatloaf.
Chili con carne.
Okay.
With chili with meat. Those are the mains.
Okay.
You want me to read through these sides?
Yeah, let's read through these.
Macaroni and cheese.
Oh, that's definitely American.
Cornbread.
Oh, yeah.
Potato chips invented in New York.
Wow.
Yeah, so the story is that someone wanted their potatoes cooked and they got mad or something. They fried them, crisped them up, and cut them too thin. And like, these are actually great.
We're on to something.
Tater tots.
Nice. I should have guessed that. Yeah.
You should know this. Breakfast, maybe.
Cereal.
Biscuits and gravy.
Oh, I love biscuits and gravy.
Jello salad. I mean, you think of American food, Jello salad. That's there.
We'll take a salad and we'll make it Jello. It's great.
All right, on to desserts. Nothing more American than a
apple pie.
Apple pie.
Yeah.
Brownies.
I'll tell you what. This is controversial too. Apple pie.
You don't like it?
Apple pie is the Dr. Seuss of what's the other mediocre thing I said? I can't remember.
Hallelujah Chorus.
It's the Hallelujah Chorus of Dr. Seuss. Like that apple pie is good. It's not bad, but it's just not my favorite.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, I saw this recipe, and as soon as we get our oven working, we need to make it. But you take a fully cooked apple pie.
Yeah.
And then you put it down, and then you pour the cheesecake mixture over it, and then you cook the cheesecake, and it's like apple pie cheesecake.
Man, that sounds good. Cheesecake's great.
Yeah. Brownies, Chocolate chip cookies. You know, chocolate chip cookies were actually an accident. Have you heard this?
No.
So they used to make just chocolate cookies. And what you would do is you would warm up the chocolate. And you would melt in the chocolate into the flour. And you had chocolate. And I guess she was in a hurry and the chocolate didn't melt all the way, but she didn't have time. So she just cooked them like they were. Chocolate chip cookies. Boom. People loved them.
Man.
S'mores.
S'mores. That's great.
Clearly pumpkin pie. I don't think pumpkin is a New World vegetable. So pecan pie.
Okay, there you go.
Pecan pie, apple pie.
Apple pie's better.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what's better than apple pie? What pie is better than apple pie?
I like blueberry pie.
Oh, that's pretty good.
I like the berry kind of pies. Yeah. Like they have like other kind of
like it has like the white like frosting type stuff and the berries on top.
Yeah, I like that stuff for pie, as far as pies go.
All right, and then breakfast foods, pancakes with syrup.
Okay,
it's American.
Yeah.
Scrapple. Have you ever heard of scrapple?
Oh, it's like a Pennsylvania thing.
Yeah, like apples and pecans and stuff, isn't it?
Well, let's look up scrapple right now. My understanding is it's like a disgusting like you just take like whatever's left on a plate and you like it's like a mixture of stuff. But I think so. Scrapple is a Pennsylvania Dutch breakfast staple made from ground pork and trimmings combined with cornmeal,
what I was thinking about.
Buckwheat flour, and spices. Often served pan fried. It's a loaf-like dish that's sliced and fried for a crispy, savory. So it's like pork scraps, and then you fry them up. It sounds gross, Pennsylvania Dutch people.
Because I was thinking it was more like you weren't at the Seder meal.
I was not. No.
So like if you take like maple syrup and apples and pecans and stuff like that, and you mix them up, maybe some raisins.
That sounds
stuff.
Pretty good.
Yeah. But that's apparently not. That's what I had in mind. And the last one on this list is grits.
Grits. I'm not a grits fan. I am a fan of things you put in grits.
Okay.
And so I can eat grits as long as it's like give me some shrimp or some butter or some sugar or whatever. I just don't want just grits though.
Well, if you have grits that have like a little bit of salt, a little bit of butter, and maybe a touch of sugar, I can do that. I mean, I think that then you like grits.
It's like the same thing like oatmeal. It's like I just need to put a little sugar in it, or I'm not just going to.
But you don't eat hamburger meat without it being seasoned.
No, that's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
So I would
say
that
it's fine,
unless
Yeah.
That's not. I wouldn't call that over doctoring grits.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I feel good. Well, that's good. America. I'm surprised. Like a lot of that, it seems like we haven't been around that long. Like, what were people doing beforehand?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And it's hard to. It's like mathematics. In order to get a PhD in mathematics, you have to come up with new math. That's like there's a lot that's already been done. What else am I going to do? Like America comes on the stage. 200 and some odd years ago. Where are we at now? Almost 200 and do the math for me.
I'm not going to. It's too late.
250.
That sounds right.
250-ish.
Yeah.
And is that right? No.
Close to 76 to 25. You kind of, yeah.
And so, all these other countries, like, where have you been all these years?
Dude, they got comfortable.
Yeah, they got comfortable.
And they weren't expecting any apple. Like, I'm like, how did, I just don't understand. Once you make one pie,
right?
Don't you just figure out them all? Like, or a lot of them, you're like, oh, I forgot apples could go in there. Like, come on, you're better than that, Like, they make peach cobbler, but just never thought of apple pie. I don't know. It just blows my mind.
That's good.
But that's great. We did the gamut, which we're gonna talk about a Hebrew word yum.
Yeah.
Which I thought is kind of like yum.
Yummy
for food. Yeah. So I think the connection's good.
That's good.
All right. Well, let's talk creation and take it to the next level. From the hearts of the Low Country in South Carolina,
it's the Take Two podcast, where we take theology to the next level. All right, so Zach, I guess this will go into our Think Tank Thursday. I don't know. Okay. Are you comfortable with that?
I'm comfortable with it. Yeah, that's good. Think Tank Thursday. It's good. I like it's got that TH and TH. That's nice.
Yeah, Think Tank Thursday. So we've done a couple on cosmological type arguments. So we did the Kalam cosmological argument. And that just argues that the universe began to exist. And it doesn't really take into account how old the universe is. Maybe people could pick up from how I talk that I do happen to believe the Earth is rather old. And I don't know where you're at, and you don't have to.
Ooh, I'll be surprised.
Yeah, you can be
Sneak
surprised.
attack. Secret. Well, I will say this. I don't want. Did I interrupt like a diatribe you're about to go on?
I'll just say that. And then the second one was we did the Aquinas existence proof. Yeah. But we had a follower on YouTube,
nice.
Ask kind of like, he had never heard of you wanted kind of an idea of how could you biblically think that the earth was old. So I thought maybe we would do that. So then you were going to say
it's a good question, because I feel like there's a few different camps. Like there's some camps that are like, hey, Earth is like 6,000 years old. Like it's pretty young. It's like maybe up to like, I don't know, 12,000 or something. And usually, and I think this is going to dovetail into our episode here, is usually it's like, well, I take the Bible literally. I read the Word of God.
Right.
Literally, I'm not making up stuff.
Right.
And that's like which I think is a good sentiment to have.
Right.
It's like, okay, what do you mean by that? But it's like, I think that's you don't want these crazy people that make words say whatever they want them to say, or you know what I mean?
Right. And I've even heard, so we've been using broadly Old Earth. I don't know if we said Young Earth, but broadly, those are the two camps: Old Earth, Young Earth. But even some of you said 12,000.
Yeah.
And I've heard people say, well, maybe 12,000, maybe 10,000, maybe 20,000. I've heard people say, well, maybe 50,000. So all of those people, there are some, dyed in the wool young earthers. It's like they know, 7,000 years old. Yeah. And so they would say, you are not a young earther, you are a new earther. So there's like this, young earth, new earth, old earth. So, and they would say that new earthers are compromising a little bit. And I would think they would say that from the genealogies.
Yeah, you do the math and you're like, well, it's got to be 6,000 or whatever.
Right.
But at the center of this, or a big part of this, is this word yom.
Yeah.
Because words mean things. And if you do love the Bible and you believe that it is inspired, like, words are important. You can't just play with them. And so we all know yom means a day. Case closed. We're done.
Closed, yeah. Yeah, and I've been on record to say in my previous podcasting career and in front of people that if Moses, when he wrote yom, thought a 24-hour period, then I think that's probably is a case closed. Like if he wrote that thinking, I don't think we can make a text say something that the original author didn't mean. I even hesitate saying that because like when Isaiah wrote a virgin shall conceive, did he know that there was going to be an ultimate fulfillment later? I don't know. I don't know if that fits into that same category. But so anyways, for this podcast, I think this is a big topic. So I think we had to split this across two podcasts.
That's right. We don't want to rush through. We want to do it due diligence. And so this podcast is all about yom.
Yeah, and it's really just asking the question, is it possible to be faithful to the text?
That's a good question.
And interpret yom to not be a 24-hour period?
Because I think I like that question because that's the crux of it, because if you are young earth or new earth, that's what you're clinging to. I'm faithful to the text.
Right.
And I think a problem with old earth is you're lumped in with anyone and everyone, where you have some crazies and you have people that hate that they don't view scripture in the same way. And most of the time, young earth and new earth, maybe there is some nuances there, but they're like more in a box compared to the old earthers, are all over the place. Yeah.
And so, I'm glad you said it because I'm a day ager, which is a specific stripe of old earther, but there are gap theories. There are, the ancient Near Eastern, they just think all of Genesis 1 is metaphor type stuff. Mm-hmm. So there are other things out there. So I'm going to be personally arguing from, a day ager. But even in this podcast right here, I'm not necessarily even trying to argue my side. I'm just trying to say, here are the facts, and as I see them, here are some arguments that are normally made in favor of yom having to be a 24-hour period. And then I'll say, well, maybe not so fast. Maybe those arguments don't go through.
Maybe not so fast. Yeah. Well, I like where you're starting here is that if you're going to do a word study, it's good to look at different places the word is used. Yeah. Because words can, just like today we use words and we can mean different things by using the same word. Yeah. The same thing can happen, in scripture. That's right.
So yom, very similar to our word day, has 4 literal definitions. So it can refer to just the time. I'll just say the time. I don't want to use the word day. Okay, yeah. But the time when sunlight is out. So you might say it's daytime. You might say, Josh, it's about to be nighttime. You're going to have to, we generally mean the sun has gone down. So it can just mean day. Genesis 1:5, God called the light day. So very, very straightforward. It can refer to a specific calendar date. So you might say, what day does Memorial Day fall on this year? and
you're like, I know that yom.
Yeah, you know that yom?
Yeah. Like my birthday is on this yom. Like it's very specific. I see. Right.
Leviticus 23:27 says on the 10th day of this 7th month, and I don't have a whole quote here, but you see like the first day of Nisan. That's another
dude.
Common...
It's like a Toyota telethon or like that's right. Toy whatever. It's neat. The day of Nisan. I love that.
That's right. The third literal definition of the word yom is a 24-hour period.
Playing right into their hands, Michael.
That's right. So, and we use that say like, hey, literally one day from now, we're going to be in this place or something. We use it the same way. One Bible verse, Exodus 20:10, talks about the seventh day is a Sabbath day. And we're talking about 24
and
hours
they would,
of rest.
just do, that makes sense. They're not saying like, Sabbath, is going to be for 2 weeks straight or something like that.
Yep. All right. And then the fourth literal definition, this is a literal interpretation. So some people will say to me, oh, well, you don't take it literally. I'm like, well, actually, I do take Genesis literally. Well, I guess I do take, there's part of it I take metaphorically, but for the word definition of yom, I do take it literally, and I take it in this fourth literal sense, an indefinite longer period of time. And even in the very next chapter, Genesis 2:4 uses the word yom. It says, in the day that the Lord made the earth and the heavens. And if you look in interlinear, yom's in there twice.
Okay, yeah.
And so you have 2:4.
I do. In the ESV, it says, these are the generations of the heavens and the earth when they were created in the day that the Lord God made the earth and the heavens.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, maybe you can Blue Letter Bible or Bible Hub this for me.
I'll check
but just see if yom is used in there twice. While he's doing that, I will just say that we don't use it as much in English this way. And we'll talk at the very end about why I believe that is the case. But we do have some examples in English where we'd use the word day in this fourth version. One would be like you might say, well, in my grandfather's day, they didn't do it that way. And you don't mean, well, the daylight's out or a specific, you just mean this longer.
Back in the day.
Yeah, back in the day, right. Or you might speak of a future event. Sometimes you would say, there's going to be a day of reckoning. Like there's going to be, sometimes we'll say the day of the Lord in the Old Testament. We don't mean like a 24-hour literal time. Are there two yoms in 2?
So there's only one yom in 2:4, but if you go to 2:17, it talks about, but of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, thou shalt not eat of it, for in the day, I guess that's a specific day that thou eat of it. I'm trying to think of other days. It's yom. You should get the interlinear out. Yom is used a lot in Genesis.
It is
it's
used
all
a lot.
over the place.
Yeah.
It's like several times in each chapter. There's a lot of uses of yom. So it's a good word study to just glance through because there is a lot in there.
So you might be saying, okay, Michael, there's these 4 literal definitions of the word day. Clearly, it seems like Moses and God intends through Moses to communicate 24-hour days, right? And there are often some rules that people will cite, and they'll cite. I like how, if I can poke a little bit back, they cite this as if they discovered some grammar book that Moses had that, an English book, like these are the rules.
I think he used a Becca. Moses.
But the first time I heard this, I was like, oh well, you hear something that's counter to how you're thinking, you kind of feel that oh, I guess if these are rules, then the more I looked into it, I said these rules aren't.
It's almost reverse engineer. Like you might find patterns, but they're not using the rules. Maybe they often did things a certain way, but it's hard to say these were like ironclad rules.
These are the rules. So these are some of the quote unquote rules that are often given. So whenever you see yom used with an ordinal number or a cardinal number, then it has to be a literal day.
That's convenient for creation.
It's very convenient. So what I did was I did a search of the word yom in an interlinear one time when I was researching this, and I looked at the verses, and I looked at every single verse that yom was tied to some type of number. Ordinal would be like first, second, third.
Yeah.
Cardinal would be like the 11th day of, that's still an ordinal. But anyways, And most of the occurrences where it's tied to a number happen in Genesis 1.
Yeah. And so you're skewing it in one account that just
Right.
repeats it a lot. So not saying it couldn't be that, but that just like tipping the scales in your favor just from like that couple of uses.
So here's one, and there's others. Numbers 7, 12 through 89 is through 89. Is this? Could that really be? Does number 7 have 89 verses in it? you can check, man.
That's
no
pretty
wonder
fun.
Numbers is so difficult to read.
Boom! It does 89 verses.
Yeah. So this describes gifts that are given, and each day is numbered. And clearly, this is an historical count of people giving, consecutive gifts on consecutive days of the calendar, and it's often used as an example. See, here's days with numbers, so it's got to be that type of thing. But it kind of begs the question, because number 7 is kind of a different type of genre.
That's a great point. Where that number 7 is easy to peg. That it's just like we're just recounting like this historic. Like it's there's definitely no poetry really in that. I don't think.
And we have Hosea 6:2 that says, "After 2 days he will revive us, and on the third day he will raise us up." Seem to be prophetic for a future thing. And there we have ordinals with the word yom. Clearly, I think most people understand it as a figurative. They don't take it as day 1, day 2, day 3. So
right. Oh, that's
a good counterexample.
That's good. So context is important. The small sample size, and then kind of begging the question. Yeah. So I like it though. It's like reverse engineering. I think it's good to look at, but you can kind of overstate your case that way.
Yeah. And I think Genesis 1 is somewhat unique among Scripture. Yeah. So it's hard to say, these day by day accounts, like, on the first of Nisan this happened. I keep using that one because it shows up a couple times. Then to compare that to the first day of creation. A second rule that's often cited is, evening and morning. So that's if we have an evening and a morning, clearly we're talking about a 24-hour day cycle. The sun will go around. And I think this is actually, next. I said I wasn't going to argue from my position, but I think this actually is in the older's favor. And I really kind of follow Hugh Ross's thinking on how to understand Genesis 1. But the problem on, if you are a young earther, I think most of the time they understand it to be that the sun was created on the fourth day. I think Hugh Ross, in my view, is the sun becomes distinct on the fourth day. So it's perspectival. But if you do believe that the sun was created on the fourth day,
what are we doing with
then you can't have morning and evenings, because morning and evenings, the only literal definition of that is a sunrise and a sunset. So you have 3 pairs of evening and morning. Was the first day, and evening morning was the second day.
And logically, you would say that this is not adding up.
Right, you can't have a morning and an evening until the sun's there. Even if it's perspectival, or if it's when the sun is created, you don't have a perceptible sun that's rising and falling.
You're not getting that. Where I see this other note on there that evening and morning may as well. It could just be a literary marker or device. If it is poetry or something like that, you hit these beats where you're using this to prove a point and saying, hey, on to the next stanza, on to the next phrase, whatever you're trying to do.
The next epoch. All right. Some will say, well, in Hebrew, and we'll talk a little bit about this towards the end, words get conjugated. And so you have, just like in English, we conjugate words, you can have singular, plural forms of verbs. And they'll say that the singular yom with no modifiers always just means like a typical normal day, what we would think of. And then Genesis 2:4, where I looked at this, uses the singular form of yom, but it really refers to the entire creation week. Says, in the day that the Lord made the heaven and the earth, and that is yom. So it's the same way. Other examples of the singular form, Psalm 21, may the Lord answer you in the day of trouble. So probably not a literal day.
Right,
it's talking about an unspecified period of time. Zechariah 14:7, it will be a unique day known only to the Lord. So a couple more counterexamples.
Nice. So we're really just building a case here. I see your next one, lack of symbolic indicators. Would most young earthers say that like Genesis 1 is definitely like just not poetic? Or you know what I'm saying? Is that the stance they take? I've always grown up in a young earth context.
Yeah.
And I feel like I hear like Genesis 1 is poetry of sorts, but maybe like the hardcore people are like, this is like straight historical narrative with no.
And by poetry, do you mean like in a verse with meter, or do you just mean like it's not necessarily strict to be taken straightforward?
Correct. Yeah. Where it's not the same as number 7 or whatever you're saying.
Right.
You know
it is
saying?
like it's a different genre.
Yeah.
I think people would maybe not agree that it's poetry, but maybe agree that it's a different genre. But I think that there are indicators. The one we just talked about, evening, morning. If there's not a sun or a perceptible sun, then it's hard to say you had an evening or a morning. But Moses says there was the first day, the second day, and there was the evening and morning. So those could be symbolic structures. Genesis 1 is highly ordered and patterned, characteristic of theological narratives rather than just a journalistic account. And then we have this idea that day 6...
That's a busy day.
It's a very busy day.
Get to work. Yeah, man.
And, God can do what he wants to.
Yeah.
But if you think of all that happens on day 6, including all the land animals being created, land animals being created, more than just mammals, creation of Adam and Eve. Adam and Eve are granted dominion over the animals. Adam names them. Then Eve is actually created after that, and then there's some type of wedding ceremony.
Dude, I'm getting tired just talking about this.
That's all on. So it may be possible for God to do a whole bunch very quickly, but that's a lot for Adam to do as a man.
Yeah, that's a good point. I bet you believe in theistic evolution too, Michael, huh? Give a lot of time.
No, old Earth creationists, which
but that's because again, I think that's like that's why that's why old Earth is so bad, because it's like all those theistic evolutionists are in there too, or you know what I mean?
Yeah, like, and I'll just take it, since you mentioned that, I'll take a side, because I did watch this video where I think his last name is Hovine. Said, I think it was him. If I'm misattributing, I apologize. But it was, I can prove that the Earth is not old.
Okay.
And I was like, okay, I'm open to, I'm open-minded, even though I have an opinion. I'm open-minded, and then he goes in to disprove evolution.
I'm and you're like, oh, we're baiting.
Those are two different categories, because I don't believe in evolution. I think evolution falls flat on its face. So I think that God, had. Just like in Young Earther, I think God had a special act of creation, and then rested a little bit, not for a day. Special act of creation, special act of creation, special acts of creation, and it was separated by by periods of time. So it's just how long those separations were would be the difference. Yeah. Genesis 2:2-3 implies that the seventh day has no end, which supports the view that the days are not identical 24-hour periods. And the writer of Hebrews also alludes to this. It says that we want to enter into his day of rest that he's currently enjoying. That's a loose paraphrase.
It's open. It's not like it's gone on for a couple of days.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're looking at different ways that you might decide whether it's possible or not. So those are some of the rules that people might give. And so what happens, I gave a whole bunch of notes to ChatGPT. I think it took something out of order. So let's skip down to 6 and then we'll come back to 5.
Great.
So some people will also claim that the consistent grammatical structure of Genesis would inveigh against it being like a different genre. Basically, they're saying it's consistent. The clear, plain reading, I think, is what, and I think this is a good argument. The clear, plain reading is kind of lends itself to just assume it's a normal day. Yeah,
if you're reading, because I can see, you're like, oh well, you read Proverbs from Genesis and Revelation, Apocalyptics, probably different Genesis, but in Genesis we're reading about Joseph. Is that we can just, was, what I mean? It's like, that's all kind of wrapped up in Genesis, So I think a lot of people kind of say, well, it's in the same book. Why is it so different at the beginning than other places? Which I think, like you said, it's a good way to think. Because I will say it's probably where I land. I'm like, it could go either way, but it just seems like Young Earth is the easiest way to read it. Not saying Old Earth couldn't happen, but yeah.
And I would say, especially if you're an English reader reading your English Bible, it is the natural way to understand it. I think probably most people grow up being young earthers, but then when you grow things.
When you grow up and become an adult, you understand young earth. I'm kidding.
Then you grow up and mature. Once I was a child, then I was. But you see, like, if you look at the
graph,
the different days, like day 1.
Oh, they match up, and day 4,
day 2, day 3. It's like he's preparing the different spaces, and then day 4, 5, and 6, he's preparing the things that are going to inhabit those spaces, roughly. And you also, this repeated, paradigm lends itself to either a figurative or not necessarily a wooden interpretation. Like people as far back as is either, I think is Augustine. It's either Augustine or Anselm. I think it was Augustine that did not believe it was to be taken as 6 consecutive 24-hour period days.
Man. I feel like everything goes back to Augustine in some way. Like, well, Augustine thought this. That's good.
All right, so let's get back up to 5. So I am putting forth a positive. So all those were kind of arguments against, objections against, and my answer to them. I want to put forth a positive reason why you might want to read this as being longer, because if you look at the verbs, you have a couple verbs in 1:1. In the beginning, God created, and then down in 1:21, God created the great sea monsters, and then further down, 1:27, God created man in his own image. Those 3 verses use the Hebrew verb bara, which means to create from nothing, to create basically instantaneously from scratch, from nothing. Okay. If you look at all the other verbs, these are process verbs. So you might, if you're reading the 14, verse 14, God said, "Let there be lights. Let there bring forth." God made, God formed. Let the earth bring forth vegetation. These verbs in Hebrews are process verbs that generally indicate some time along with them. They're not like the instantaneous bara that God did with the heavens and the earth, the great wells, and with Adam and Eve. Why did God do those 3 differently? I think it makes sense for the heaven and the earth, and for Adam, why did he create the great sea monsters? Some people I've heard say these are actually the dinosaurs. So maybe he created the dinosaurs from scratch. Whereas let the others. I wouldn't want to say the word evolve, but maybe adapt.
Okay, I like that. So you got one of those like you're being like, you're challenging me on some grammatical stuff. Let me flip it back on you and look at that.
And just say, hey, if you're reading the text carefully, there may be some indications of how you might do it. All right, so that's kind of the passage of Genesis 1. But now there's some passages outside Genesis 1 that people might read and say, if you're going to consistently look at the Bible, these passages would say you need to be a young earther. Probably the one I hear the most is Romans 5:12.
Boom.
Yeah.
There was no death before the fall.
Right.
Yeah.
And so if the earth is
there's no sin,
4.5 billion years old or 3.8 billion years old, whatever, however old it is, and life has been on earth for millions of years, clearly then there was death. So is that a problem with, Genesis or with Romans? That's the question. Because if it is, then that's probably not a good interpretation, right? So if we deal with Romans 12, I think clearly this verse has human death in view.
I think it's talking about the gut biome and all this crazy stuff that's going on. That's always an interesting one because there's a lot of death happening a lot.
Well, and that's that's the other thing because I think it's human death and I think it's human spiritual death, not even necessarily physical death, because Adam and Eve, the day that they ate the fruit, they spiritually died.
Yeah.
Now, one of the natural consequences of that spiritual death is that they're eventually going to face a physical death, and that's how God is going to actually redeem them, give them resurrection bodies. But that death that they experienced was a spiritual death. And then, I've heard people say, well, actually what it was anything that had blood. I'm like, how do you're kind of...
You throw in something in. I mean,
I know blood is a huge deal.
I understand that. I think it's not scripturally grounded, but it makes sense kind of, but it's not you're not pulling that from the Bible.
Yeah. And then I'm like, well, how do you define blood? Because, if it's just the fluid that circulates to give nutrients and take away waste, well, trees pull up water, and is that blood? Well, no, we call it sap. It's not the same thing. The tree didn't shed its sap for life. You know what I'm saying? I get that there is a distinction between blood and stuff, but I think it's arbitrary to say that this verse applies to only animals when we know that there would have been microbes that would have been destroyed that had animal-like features. There would have been lots of plant cells destroyed. So on and on and on. So I don't think that this is...
That's a great slam dunk.
It's not a slam dunk. Okay, for me, I would say, human spiritual death entered by Adam. Clearly, I think that's what this is saying.
Well, the Sabbath, we look at the Old Testament, and it's 24 hours, and it's a strict yom, not one of your crazy yoms.
I agree. So the claim is the Sabbath says in 6 days of the Lord, the command says in 6 days the Lord made the earth, heaven and earth, then creation must also be 6 days. I'm like, to me, this one is like, there are arguments that people make, and I'll tell you next week, or the next one, what I think the best arguments against my position are. Because I think both positions have their weaknesses, and I'm willing to be convinced either way. But I don't think this is one of the better arguments, because clearly it's pattern matching.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Like you see, like we were talking about all these patterns in Genesis 1, and we mentioned that Hebrews passage. We look up, to one day when we'll be in the Sabbath, or Israel's in the Promised Land, or it's like it's not. I think we all would say, hopefully that's not lasting a day. Yeah. And so if God worked for 7 yoms, whether those were 24-hour yoms or they were longer and unspecified yoms, then we work for 6 yoms and we take a yom off. So I think that's fine. All right, so I thought we might just end with several verses where yom is not used as a single day. Oh, that's good.
And I think that as English readers, sometimes yom is not even translated as day. Sometimes it's translated as the word when or period. So if you go to a Strong's Concordance and look up the word yom and see all the times where it's not, and it's not like it's going to be every 150 different times, but this may be half a dozen or dozen, somewhere around there.
How many times do you think yom is used in the KJV according to Strong's? I've got it up right now because it's a lot.
2.5K, 2.5.
Very close. Almost 3K, 2.287K. And I'll just read this. In the KJV, it is translated day most of the time, but also time, chronicles, daily, ever, year, continually, when, as, while, full, always, whole, always. So it's a broad, and there's 2,300. There is a broad range of translation.
All right, so here's some where it is not. These are the first ones are the exact same conjugation as what's used in Genesis 1. So I'm not a Hebrew scholar. We've said that before. So I'm not claiming to be a Hebrew scholar, but these, I want to give you ones that are the exact same conjugation. Then I'll give you some that are not the exact same conjugation, but exact same conjugation, Genesis 27:45. So same conjugation, same Hebrew writer. Why would I be bereaved of both of you in one day? And clearly, the span of, this is dealing with the twins of Isaac, Esau, and Jacob. And those acts didn't happen in one 24-hour period, right? But Jacob is about to leave. Genesis 31:39, whether stolen by day or by night refers to a time of occurrence, not a full 24-hour period. Genesis 50:30, now 40 days were required for it. The Egyptians wept for him 70 days. We translate this as plural, but in the Genesis, it is a singular verb there.
Ooh, okay.
So,
all right.
singular noun there. All right, and then here's some slightly different conjugations, but other places where it's not a single day. Remember the day you stood before the Lord your God at Horeb? That was actually 40 days.
Okay.
When they were there when Moses went up the mountain. I stayed on the mountain 40 days and 40 nights. Deuteronomy 32:35, for the day of their calamity is near. Judges 18:30, until the day of captivity of the land. So that's an era. 1 Kings 8:59, that he may maintain the cause of his servants as each day requires. So this is kind of like that ongoing type of thing. There's others there that it lists there, all the places where you might hear the day of the Lord is near or something like that.
Yeah, people would probably be pretty pleased if it was one literal 24 hours. It's like, I don't want this to go longer.
So finally, I know this is longer. This is why we had to put it in two.
We had to,
because we're just dealing with the word.
That's right.
Yom now.
This is just Yom.
But why? Some questions I've had when I've taught this is like, Michael, why would Moses have used the word day?
Oh,
why would it be
else?
confusing?
Just like make it easy, Moses. Yeah,
just make it easy. Why would God have chosen the word day? Well, ancient Hebrew had approximately 8,700 words, and it depends on how you count them, and it depends on whether you count proper names and stuff like that. But when you kind of remove it down to your base words, they only had 3,000 distinct root words that they would conjugate to mean things. So one word, you know how we have words that can mean more than one thing, like bark. It can mean the sound a dog makes, or it can mean the outer covering of a tree. One word has two different meanings. So their words had to have more meanings.
Even more, By
contrast, modern English has over 1 million words. So we have era, epic, all these words that we might have used if God had used us to write this, but he didn't. He, for whatever reason, chose Moses and this Hebrew language that didn't have as many roots. So when I think Moses wrote down Yom, and he knew from his visions on the mountain that this was longer than a 24-hour period, but it was the best way he had to describe it. It was like, all right, for this day, this is... And I've heard some people say that maybe there was a day that God showed Moses what he did.
Oh, yeah.
And then Moses slept, and then he showed him what he did on the next day, and he showed him...
That's interesting,
That's an interesting theory as well, because he's up there for 40 days.
He's up there for a while,
So
I think that's good. Contextualize everything. It's good to look at. And it's always I always feel like that's how it is. There's like, you read the Old Testament, and there's like this huge gloss. And then you nail down something in the New Testament in the Greek, and it's like much more precise, just from the vocabulary. But that's good. A lot packed into Yom.
Yeah. So really, all I wanted to show was or demonstrate, or give for your consideration the possibility that you could be faithful to the text and interpret Yom as a longer, unspecified period of time, and still be true, and not give into evolution at the same time. I think that happens all the time. I was even talking to someone new to our church, and he was like, well, I heard you have some different views on, creation account. And I was going through it, and then I finally realized he thought I believed in it. I was like, well, I don't believe in evolution. He's like, you believe that the earth is billions of years old, but you don't believe in evolution? I was like, no, I don't believe in evolution. I believe God had special acts of creation along the way, so.
It's so fascinating how those are so tied together. But great. Well, good. Join us for episode 2 in this series.
Yeah. So in that episode, I'll try to lay out.
Okay.
Young Earth, Old Earth, theistic evolution.
Oh yeah.
Deistic evolution, agnostic evolution, and atheist evolution. we'll be able to cut a lot of those off, because if evolution is false, then all of those go away, and then we're really kind of left with either old Earth or young Earth creation. Which one's best?
Nice. I like it. I love it. Hope you learned something about Yam. That's our take. Thanks for listening to Take Two. Find us wherever you find podcasts and on YouTube for those who want to watch our videocast.